Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session, Better Together, Maximizing OA Impact Through Partnership. My name is Matthew Rigucci. I am the Director of Institutional Product Marketing at Wiley, and I am joined by Amy Castillo from the University of Texas at Arlington, and you are the Director of Discovery and Access?
The other way around, Access and Discovery.
Access and Discovery. I feel like the order of operations is Discovery and then Access, right? Okay. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. I know we have the enviable slot of being like just before cocktails, and everyone's kind of soporific, so we'll try to make this fun and exciting for everyone. The code of conduct, we're well into our first day, so I hope you're familiar, but here it is. Just a quick run through of this session. We only have 40 minutes today, but we'll do background and introductions, kind of set the stage for you about what we're here to talk about. And then we're going to switch perspectives. So I'll hand over to Amy to talk about the library perspective on open access partnerships, and then I'll cover the publisher perspective on OA partnerships, and then we'll close and leave time for questions at the end. But before we get started, I have a little background here, but I'm going to be a little analog here and ask a question without the fancy polls. Could I just see a show of hands? How many folks in the room work with open access in like any capacity whatsoever? If you just raise your hand. Okay, just about, for those of you watching at home, just about everyone in the room raised their hand. I like to know who I'm talking to and what the baseline of familiarity here is, and it seems like the majority of folks did raise their hand and they are familiar with it. But that being said, just providing a little bit of context, I think, around our presentation and the landscape and the different models that are out there, because you're going to be hearing from a few of them and making sure we're using the same terms and we understand what they mean. The open access movement has been around for some time, about 30 years, I think, and its promises to make research more freely available. There's been pressure placed on traditional subscription models as policy and funder mandates kind of favor routes towards open access publication as well to make, again, accelerate research discovery, make things out there more easily readable. And there are different pathways and modalities in which this has been explored over the different content providers, publishers, and vendors. And so a colleague of mine, Tasha Mellons-Cohen, who perhaps you know at Countermetrics, developed this very helpful graphic over here to the right that kind of creates its buckets, essentially, for the types or flavors of open access models that exist across different publishers. And we're going to be talking about a few of them today, right? So you have things that are more transactional one-offs, like article processing charges or APCs. You have things like read and publish agreements or transformational agreements that bundle reading and publishing together. You have community-based or cooperative journals like Subscribe to Open. There's Diamond Open Access. There's many different flavors. Amy is going to cover a few different ones in her presentation or a segment of the presentation. I'm largely going to be focusing on transformational agreements or the bundled segment of OA. But there are a lot of different terms out there, and we just wanted to set the record straight before we jump right into our different perspectives. But again, overall, the intent, regardless of what the model is, I believe the intent is really to create scalable systemic change, right? We want to increase the amount of open access published articles that are out there. And the ways that we do that, again, are more systematic, they're more structured in the different flavors that I kind of described here. So with that, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to hand over to you, Amy, who's going to talk about the library perspective on open access partnerships.
It's like way down. Hi, everyone. As Matthew said, I'm Amy Castillo. I'm the Director of Access and Discovery at University of Texas at Arlington. I didn't put any information, like a slide about UTA, but just essentially we are our R1 institution and a minorities majority serving institution as well. Okay, so first off, I want to start off with sharing a little bit about our most recently published strategic plan. It came out this summer. We have our priority 2 focusing on research excellence, which includes licensing negotiations and open access initiatives. This isn't brand new. Our prior strategic plan had open built into it as well, but this was the first time that licensing negotiations was specifically referenced in the document. So how we are prioritizing this, our way to I think, support our researchers best is through the OA agreements. We have tried a couple of programs in the past 10 years or so to do individual APC payments. We've exhausted funds both times very rapidly, and even with our best efforts to try to make it as broadly available as possible, more often than not, it was those that were more in the sciences area that were requesting the funds. So our dean felt that that wasn't going to move the needle as well as an OA agreement, kind of covering more folks. So our preference is to have an uncapped articles model if we're doing fully covered APC agreements, and this is partly for the ease of staff management, but also broader coverage for our authors. And then we want to also have the authors retain their copyright and the Creative Commons licensing if possible. Okay. In terms of ramp-up costs, we are often joining these agreements as part of our University of Texas Libraries Consortium. They handle a lot of the licensing and negotiation part of it. We join as a benefit as part of the system, which I think makes it easier kind of across the board. This is getting harder and harder to handle the cost year to year. Sustainability is a huge concern, especially as we're facing budget constraints over the next few years. In terms of the ramp-up costs themselves, I've totaled together the amount for the cost of a regular subscription jumping up to a read and publish agreement, and $64,000 was generally the amount, but that was just for that first year. Of course, we're dealing with inflation year to year as well. And then I put unlikely that we'll add any new publishers in 26. We've added 5 for 2025, and that includes 2 subscribe to open. However, a couple of hours ago, I did receive a proposal in my inbox that's kind of too good to pass up, so we're actually going to be adding another one here soon. So, but we are focusing on the maintenance and assessment part in terms of the return on investment in these agreements. For stakeholder engagement across campus, we were fortunate that the Office of Research and Innovation reached out to us. They often hear from faculty about needing that APC assistance, and this office was hearing about it because they didn't realize that the libraries, or those faculty members didn't realize the library was involved. So the Office of Research and Innovation asked the libraries for an estimate of what the ramp-up costs would be for additional OA agreements beyond what we have to include into the FY26 budget request. So what we shared with them was several publishers that we knew our authors or our researchers were publishing frequently with, and the cost of our existing OA agreement, so they could see that it wasn't just a one and done, it was a subscription based, so we would need that kind of support year to year. Unfortunately, we didn't end up getting funds through that avenue, but we at least had a conversation started and going, and they have a better understanding of the costs that are impacting the library. We also both agreed that we needed to better market the libraries in terms of publication support and research impact services. So that's a work in progress. And then at the moment, we have a satisfaction survey out, which includes questions targeted to faculty regarding APCs and open access, which I'll share what those questions are a little bit later. The survey ends in a few days, so we're looking forward to receiving the data. In terms of implementations, we have 19 plus OA agreements implemented. The link in the slides goes to our OA page, but honestly, you could just search University of Texas at Arlington, OA agreements, and it's probably the first or second result that comes up. We have 10 fully covered APCs, 3 for discounted, and then 6 and growing for the subscribe to open. For the management of these agreements, again, since we opted for the uncapped versions, very little staff maintenance is needed in terms of the mediation portion. So we really would just wait for the author to activate the publish part. We get the number of articles that had been eligible through the various reports. For discounted, we only have one that requires a staff mediation, which is essentially me going in and saying, yes, this person is affiliated with the UTA. The other 2 don't need anything. And then for the subscribe to open, there is no staff intervention, but we do watch out for any information about whether the SOO met their threshold for that year to open up content. So we do have a few that have OA guaranteed, and in the OA agreements page, I've noted that as well, so that authors that are coming across it have a better idea of what's definite versus we're hoping, good news. For the marketing side, that webpage, again, is providing that information to our authors, and I update it as often as I need to make sure that the information is correct. I do write some blog posts going out periodically. We had a OA at UTA series going for a while. It's kind of died off a little bit, but hopefully we'll resurge it now, especially with new data coming in. I can do another blog post in the springtime to share what 2025 looked like, and then also any new agreements. The liaison librarians are informed. We give them whatever information we have to share to their departments and answer questions. And then this is an area where publishers have been very helpful in terms of providing collateral to assist with that marketing and outreach portion, and offering trainings for both the librarians and the authors to get a better sense of the agreement. For the management side, I wanted to break it down kind of what this looks like on the day-to-day level. So, of course, monitor the engagement for the agreements through the publication reports. Some are various frequencies, but we have an idea of which publisher does reports when. We respond to our researchers' questions about the agreements themselves, or we receive feedback on the ones we don't have, but we would like to get maybe in the future, getting a sense of what would be of most interest. And then, of course, we're investigating costs for additional agreements, connecting with publishers to see what OA model they offer. Sometimes there is not a model that is available or that makes sense mutually, and that's fine. We kind of just see how things shake out over time. And then we monitor announcements from publishers on the models that they are bringing forth. I feel like this is kind of a constant watch and see for what comes out. So. Okay, so day-to-day, answering those questions from both authors and colleagues. Occasionally there's a challenge with a question kind of getting bounced around different departments in the library, because we have a publishing librarian, we have a Mavs Open Press, so understandably folks will reach out to them about publishing questions. We work really well together, so if the other person doesn't know, or it'll just kind of route to whoever it needs to go to. And for the most part, it's working just fine. Month to month, we have a publishing lead library specialist that reports to the publishing librarian, who gets the reports and puts them into our tracking spreadsheet to combine everything. And then from year to year, we're reviewing that usage of the agreement. Are we seeing the benefits that we thought we would from that paying up the additional ramp-up cost? And then we haven't done this yet, but planning to gather the prior year's article publications tied to an S2O that were published through published by our researchers. In terms of the impact assessment, this is in progress. I mentioned before that there was a blog, and I'll share this in a moment what the numbers were. So this shared out the total articles that were published per, I said fiscal year, but I should have said calendar year here, and the cost avoidance by publisher. And that was posted earlier this year in April 25 for 2021 to 24. On the back end, we're not sharing this out publicly, but we know internally. We monitor all of the subscription costs and the ramp costs individually, and then we compare that number to the articles published and the standard usage, of course. And then I'm also looking at the colleges and departments that are most frequently using the agreements. Excuse me. This tells us what parts of campus are using this most. Can they help us market it or share with their colleagues their experience and get their feedback? And then also on the flip side tells us which departments are not using it as well, or we don't maybe have an agreement in place that serves everybody, so it gives us an opportunity to look at what gaps there are too. For the survey questions, there were 3 specifically about OA agreements, so the awareness level of the existing agreements that we have, and then how familiar the research, or faculty, I should say, are with OA, and what contributed to that, and then if they do not want to publish OA, which we do have some folks that opt out of our agreements for whatever reason, kind of why they chose that. Okay, so just sharing a little bit of data outputs. The first table, I apologize because it might be kind of small, but again, this is on the blog post, so if you just search UTA Open Agreements, you can find it. So it's kind of showing the APC fees covered by us for those agreements by publisher, and the second table is the number of articles covered. And 25, of course, is not done, so I'll be updating this, or we'll be updating this very soon. A few more examples. The prior table wasn't as visual as I would want it to be. So this is that cost savings on the left side by college, and we, of course, understandably see that College of Engineering is by far getting the most cost savings out of the agreements. But then again, we kind of get a sense of which are not getting as well used, or what we don't have, what we have gaps for. And then on the right-hand side, we also can see the departments that have used the agreements and then by the publisher. And some are just very obvious. ACM, of course, is highly used by computer science and engineering. So it's just kind of confirmation. Okay, so this is my last slide. In terms of partnerships with our publishers, this is extremely helpful for us in terms of libraries have limited time and resources. And I'm sure, like everybody else, declining staff or turnover. We need the publishers to help support and kind of provide that OA agreement, article usage, any citation metrics, any data that shows that reach, because we need to use that to share to our administration that the value. Standards would make this much more consistent and streamlined in terms of the data collection. I know that I don't think they exist right now, but it would be helpful to have it streamlined, kind of in the similar sense of counter, right? And then it really doesn't matter what OA model it is. We have to show return on investment regardless. So in terms of publishers and libraries kind of needing to mutually assist each other and team up to show that value of mutually increasing open available articles for global use. So thank you.
Back up a couple of levels here. All right. Thank you, Amy. So now that we've covered the library perspective, can we hear? Okay. I'm going to talk about the publisher perspective over at Wiley. So I'll do my best not to provide a potted institutional history for you, but again, I do feel like there is some context here before we dive right into the partnerships. So Amy talked about a few of the different OA flavors, I think, that are out there. I'm really going to be speaking about transformational agreements today, because we do see them as that kind of bridge solution that shifts the spending that has traditionally gone towards reading, pushing it over to publishing with the means of creating more open research. And so TAs are really a key component of Wiley's strategy. If you see over here to the right, we have some data about the US. We have 61 agreements, 400 plus institutions that have covered to date 1,600 articles. The numbers globally are much larger. Again, we're trying to meet policy funder mandates that are maybe a little bit more nascent or not as developed in the United States as compared to Europe, but we're making progress. But anyway, this map shows the states. Usually they're through consortia, but sometimes we have standalone transformational agreements, or TAs, as I might call them throughout this presentation. We're big on acronyms at Wiley. But you can see kind of where the representation is to date. This is just hot off the presses this week. But TAs are really what I wanted to underscore, that they're incredibly complex and nuanced. They're really like snowflakes, that like no two are exactly alike. And that's kind of the theme of this presentation is about partnership. And we do want to be able to meet the institutional needs, which I'll speak about in a moment. But again, to talk about, because of that level of nuance, there is a complexity that comes to negotiating these arrangements. They're cross-functional. They require people from all over the business to stand these up: legal, product, sales, marketing, customer success, author marketing, you name it. Someone in Wiley probably has a hand in a TA. So they are, incredibly complex, as I've said. But really the goals, which I think are shared between us, is to increase submissions. And also broader geographic participation. I chose not to put a global map here, but if I were to show you all of the transformational agreements that Wiley has overlaid with our partnerships with Research for Life and the open access pricing parity pilot that we're doing in Latin America, you'll see that there's more equity when it comes in providing opportunities to publish open access through APC waivers and things like that, but again, to create more broader distribution. And then also to reduce the complexity for authors at the point of submission and publication as well. I was just talking about this morning, that authors are faced with many choices, and it can be a little bit of a difficult path for them, so to try to reduce that friction that they face as well. And then again, improved compliance with mandates. Not as many in the US, but we have a handful. I think that they're fast developing here. So to make sure that we are, and that institutions that are subsidizing publishing are in compliance. Yay, data. So I just wanted to call out two pieces of data that I think demonstrate the impact that transformational agreements have had at Wiley, and why they are such a cornerstone of our open access strategy. The first is this little chart, very simple line graph, just shows the exponential increase in transformational agreements that we've had over the years. I think we've topped out at 126 agreements globally to date. But really what I wanted to talk about is the sunburst chart to the left, and there's a lot of information in here. For those of you watching at home, you can take more time to dig into it. But there are really two pieces of information in this that I want to communicate that I think you can see. The first is the green section over to the right, and you can see if you work your way from the middle all the way to the outside, this represents subscription publishing, right? So in 2018, it started at 77% of the content that was being published and hosted on Wiley Online Library was behind a paywall. Over the years, and because of implementations of transformational agreements around the globe, we've been able to get that number down to 50%. Now, it has plateaued a little bit, but we're moving in the right direction, right? Because the idea is to have as much open research as we possibly can. And the key reason about why that number has been able to decline, I think the subscription numbers are able to decline. I shouldn't say decline, the percentages are able to decline. Is because of the TAs, right? So the colors look a little bit different on my slide, but what I wanted to call attention to was the publishing that's happening and being subsidized, APC coverage that are subsidized through transformational agreements. So that would be I suppose the teal, and then I don't know what you would call that, kind of like a greenish chartreuse. But that also has increased over time as well. Forgive me, I'm not really versed in color theory. But again, that is also increasing over time. And that, again, is because of the success that we've had with transformational agreements. Okay, so I've talked about sort of things more broadly. Now, in terms of the partnerships that institutions and consortia can expect with Wiley, the first thing that I really wanted to call out is transformational agreements are so different as open access is generally from traditional read agreements and licenses that the libraries have stood up for many years. And one of the reasons I think in which it's different, or one of the ways rather, is because they require consistent support throughout the life cycle of an agreement, right? Traditionally, if you sign a license for content that's paywalled, yes, you have to maintain access and solve for, troubleshoot for issues, but it's more of a set it and not forget it, but less of a hands-on approach. Transformational agreements are entirely different, right? And I'm looking at one of our customer success managers in the audience right now who can probably tell you more than me. These are dedicated specialists who are absolutely committed to ensure the success of the TA throughout the course of the agreement. This isn't just a sign on the license and then move on, but working directly with administrative contacts at the consortial or institutional level to ensure that the transformational agreement is performing, or if it's not, to try to understand why. Having the mutual touch points throughout the course of the year, quarterly check-ins, biannual check-ins, to really make sure that the institutions are aware of what article output looks like, and usage tracking and balance tracking too. Again, like I said, all TAs are different at Wiley, but we support hybrid for all, gold for some, publishing in all of our journals, but again, making sure that the publication trends are matching expectations as covered at the outset of the agreement. So we have support for administrators and those who are managing funds. We also have support for authors as well, right? And so part of the investments that Wiley has made, I think, and continues to make and continues to listen to make, is to try to reduce the friction that authors face. So we've made incredible investments in research exchange, so that at the point of submission and acceptance, authors hopefully stumble across fewer roadblocks, and making clear to them that their publications are indeed covered under the course of the agreement. It doesn't come at any additional cost to them or the library or the institution. But then also in cases where the TAs aren't performing well, trying to diagnose why, but we do offer at the institution discretion, right? We're not going to go spam your authors with marketing emails if you don't want them, but certainly try to reach out to those authors too as a means of increasing the means of submissions. And then in some cases, we also, not so much in the US, but we do offer author workshops as well for those who are more nascent to transformational agreements. We do have support and information hubs. I've pictured one over here to the right, and we do press releases, but again, making sure that it is kind of a seamless process once the transformational agreement is stood up, and that the institutional end users are aware, right? Amy spoke about this earlier, the critical need for marketing and being able to make sure that the stakeholders are all engaged. Okay, data. Am I doing on time? Okay. So we do offer some reporting and data. Some of it is self-serve, or you have the ability to self-serve. Some of it is more a la carte and is presented to you by way of your customer success manager. So we do the means in which funds are administered and watched is through the Wiley Open Access Dashboard, or WOAD. You can see a picture of it over here to the right. But performance metrics and things like that can be monitored through reports that can be delivered on demand. I think our reports have something like 40 fields in them that provide bibliographic information about articles as they're being published. So those can be retrieved at any time. But as I spoke about earlier, our customer success managers are also invested in the success of the transformational agreements, and they provide benchmarking. And they do that against the institution itself by providing, this is kind of a lighter table in that middle slot over to the right, but where were you at this point last year, and talking to you about it. Where are the opt-out rates? Hopefully they're declining or non-existent. If they are up or increasing, we need to understand why. But being able to look at that sort of thing in real time and address it, as opposed to waiting to the end of the agreement. And then something I just wanted to touch on, and I think Amy mentioned this too, but the lack of standards when it comes to presenting information and data to institutions, I think is very apparent, right? So this is another way in which TAs are different from read deals or licensing deals, is that with the licensing deals, you have counter, for example, where you can actually assess readership and engagement of the content that you've licensed. With publishing, it's a little bit different. Well, I'll talk about citations in a minute, but the way in which this information is presented for all the publishers to do this, we're all kind of doing it on our own, or we're doing what we think is best. I know that there was a recent NISO publication, or forthcoming one, about business practices, but again, I think that the statistics so that institutions are receiving everything in the same way, to stack them one against another is important, but until that day, we provide publishing breakdowns by subject as well, although we're using internal proprietary, what I call Walt Wiley Online Library subject headings to show trends and where the publications are happening. Amy, you mentioned like engineering is incredibly popular at your school. It wouldn't surprise me to see that reflected in a report like this. And then we also do benchmarking against other institutions, so maybe within the consortia itself, regionally, nationally, whatever you would like, but again, just to provide those metrics so that you understand sort of where you are in your TA journey and how it's performing. And then speaking a little bit more about metrics, sorry, I feel like I'm in a business presentation with all of my slides and graphs and things, but I'm a visual learner, and I feel like being able to visualize some of this data to show the impact is incredibly important, and this is a key one. So we use, I mentioned that institutions have the ability to download reporting, but it's just a spreadsheet, right? We also have internal Power BI tools that take the data, the publication data for our authors and put it against each other, but then also store that at the transformational agreement level for the institution so that we can show them where the changes are happening based on the behavior and performance of the deal. So this is probably the most, it doesn't maybe look all that exciting, maybe it kind of looks like an Italian Neapolitan cookie at the top here, but it shows a pretty stark change. So that berry color at the top shows that there was 75% publishing that was happening behind the paywall 1 year prior to the agreement. And then if you look it's decreasing over time, and you see now that there's almost a complete inversion for this particular institution where because of the TA, I think, output is largely open access, either covered in a gold or hybrid journal. So demonstrating that value is important. I realize I don't have a lot of time, so I'll whiz through the rest of this, but we're trying to show those numbers either as percentages or as absolutes, working with institutions. What do your deans and provosts need in order to see that this is a valuable investment? And to help visualize that, we have this all baked into our Power BI dashboards, but we can certainly provide it at request, and then also we can provide that data. Again, it's not standardized, it doesn't come in reporting, it's more a la carte, but it is something that we can and do provide on occasions, usually in those check-ins that I mentioned. I have, I think, 2 more slides, just really quickly. Impact assessment. I think that there are 2 things that we can look at. I've been really talking about the article output, which is like one indicator of success, certainly, but Amy spoke about the need to communicate reach and like what is happening with the articles that you're publishing. It's not enough just to say that you've published an open access article or a number of them, but rather what is the impact that they're having in the world, right? So we try to look at things like readership and viewership, and we can do that. We can provide raw numbers, visualize that data, like the tables on the right of the 2 top ones. We can provide raw numbers to show increases over time, provide splits on access types, but then also to show where that readership is happening across the globe and benchmarking that year on year as well. So as you can see, we have lots of data that we have access to and to share and to show that your TA is having an impact on the world. And then the other piece that Amy did touch on was citation impact analysis. Making sure that we are also tracking cites received from the articles that are being published as well. Now it's, citations are an important metric. I think that they're the currency, I think, for researchers and academic institutions to demonstrate impact. But it's gonna, it's kind of like a long tail. It takes a little bit of time for articles to accumulate citations, and especially over the course of the TA. But I do have some charts, I think, on the bottom left, for example, shows an increase at least in percentage of citations. And then, again, going back to providing subject types, identifying trends that exist in publication as well that could lead to partnerships with different faculty departments, for example, who's taking advantage, what type of researchers are taking advantage of the transformational agreements, which ones aren't, are there opportunities to go and speak to them as well. So we do provide that data, we visualize it, we provide the raw data as well. So here's where things get better together. I've got 7 minutes, all right, I'll be really quickly. Not all partnerships are alike. Certainly, I'm speaking with the might of a large commercial publisher that has resources. I understand that small university presses or society publishers may not have these resources, but we really do we're able to scale and scope because of our size and because of our experience. One thing that successful collaborations, I think, have in common too is communication. So we have our customer success managers who are speaking regularly to our customer partners, and that we're being flexible, like I said. Not all TAs are alike, and that we're being transparent. The data that I shared is just one possible option of the things that you can receive. But again, we want to be able to provide data that is going to have an impact and help institutions communicate the value of their transformational agreements and that they are indeed transformative. And then the last thing I'll just say is that we have an alignment on shared goals and desired outcomes. I think the number of things that unite us outnumber the things that divide us, that we want the same things. We all want open research. This is the way that we're choosing to make it happen. The models have evolved over time. They will continue to evolve to meet new and emerging needs that institutions have, but hopefully we're rowing in the same direction, and I hope that this presentation has been just one small manifestation of that in just 35 minutes. So with that, we have about 5 minutes for questions. So if you want to come to the microphone, Amy and I can answer your questions. And thank you very much. If you guys want to get to a cocktail hour, I completely understand that too. Yeah.
So there was a question on the Whova app for the session. The question was about how do we handle, I think from both of our perspectives, staff turnover, kind of the reduction in staff in terms of handling the agreements themselves. From my perspective, I think we're fortunate that we have a publishing team. I think it's 3 people, and all of them have access to the reports that we receive, including, and then me too, so that's 4 people. And so far, crossing fingers, none of us have left. So, but I do recognize that not every institution has that, that level of staffing. That's kind of why I go back to the help from the publishers in terms of that reporting and kind of that consistency too. I was actually just talking with one of our partners a couple of days ago about we don't get frequent reports from them, but then they said that they could do that for us, and it's like, oh, okay, why didn't I ask before? But like that'll help us just so it's not out of sight, out of mind, because like otherwise I'm more than likely going to wait until the end of the year or January to collect the prior year information. Again, because I have other things that I'm working on, and so that report coming through on a semi-regular basis helps generate that, like, okay, I need to look at the spreadsheet that we're tracking information. Maybe there's some additional data points that will be helpful that we need to explore. In terms of like getting this presentation together, like Matthew helped generate some ideas, and I'm like, okay, I can make this chart on this, and like the department thing actually came from our conversations. So yeah, I agree, like the communication part is very helpful.
I just wanted to add to that, and the feeling is very mutual. Sometimes we do have, I think publishers, are more prone to staff turnover than institutions. That's not to say it doesn't happen there, and that's something that a conversation with a customer came up today, as a matter of fact. And knowledge transfer is so key, but sometimes we don't always have the opportunity. People leave suddenly. And people have to kind of start from square one, but hopefully the supporting folks who are around like a transformative agreement. So in a scenario where like, an account manager left, for example, I can't sing the praises of the customer success team enough, not just because one's sitting here, but because they really are that kind of the glue that holds it together and can kind of fill in, new staff members who are coming in. And to bring them up to speed to make sure that there's no loss of service or a sense of partnership. Okay, 2 minutes early, I'll take it. Thank you everyone for coming. Enjoy the rest of your conference.